Greetings, people of the internet. This is Scott with CircWorks Art Labs. Welcome to the underground lair. You know, here in the Art Labs, we like to dabble in all sorts of mad science, creating robots, alien zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity, with the ultimate goal of total world domination. Now you might be saying to yourself, Scott, world domination, I mean, that's a pretty lofty goal. It's a little bit unrealistic, isn't it? Well, I might argue that because really the way we think here is bigger, better. Why stop at taking over the world when there are so many other worlds you can take over? Let's think outer space, interdimensional, and dare I say, fantasy worlds? Fantasy worlds, you ask? Yes, we're going to talk about one such fantasy world right now. Have any of you guys heard of Miscria? Yes, Miscria. If you haven't heard of it, I'm going to enlighten you and let you know a little bit about this, but it's a world inhabited by very, very interesting creatures, and we're actually going to sit at the desk and design some of these creatures, tell you how we do it, and kind of give you a background of that whole process. So let's move over to the art desk and we'll get to it. Alright, so in order to understand what Miscria is, you have to know what a Miscrit is. Now, a Miscrit is a creature, and it is featured in a game called Miscrits. It's a game that I have a lot of experience working on before my tenure here in the Art Lab. I did a lot of work for this game, a game put out by Broken Ball Game Studios. And so I was approached by a Miscrit fan site, and this is probably the big Miscrit fan site. And it's been a while since I've done a Miscrit, and they were wondering, you know, we really like to partner with you on something and create a Miscrit that is sort of like a mascot for our site, and then, you know, hopefully maybe even get it in the game, which I have a little pool in that direction. So I'm thinking, yeah, we might be able to do something. It's been a while since I've done a Miscrit, so let's look into this. So we're gonna see. First, we're gonna sit down and just think over, you know, an idea for a Miscrit that might fit for this site, and then if all goes well, we'll see if we can try to get that Miscrit in the game. So the game itself is a creature battle game. Now, there's a lot of these type of games. Miscrits is really, you know, I'm a little partial to it because I worked on it, but it's got some really unique things, and I won't go into all that. You can visit it online. You can see what that's all about. But we're going to start by creating some of these creatures, and we're going to take you step by step on how we do this with this one creature in mind that's going to sort of serve as sort of the face for this Miscrit fan site. Now, when we create a Miscrit, there's some things we have to think about. There's some guidelines and kind of things we want to follow. Just so that they look somewhat uniform, that they're living in the same world, and you know, and that they belong in this sort of this family of creatures. Now, I'm going to throw out some rules, and there are instances where we kind of bend the rules a bit here and there, but for the most part, we like to follow this. So, and again, it's been a while since I've done any of these, and I'm just going off of what I know from when I used to design these creatures. Some of those things may have changed or evolved since then. I can't really speak too much to that. I can just let you know what we did when I was working on this project. So, anyway, each creature, each Miscrit, has 4 evolutions. So, usually starts off small, usually really cute, not always, but at least the ones that I like to work on are kind of cute, and the idea is that when you nurture them and everything and train them, then they grow and become more powerful. And you've probably heard of this type of concept before. And again, there are some similarities to other games out there. Miscrits does have a lot of you know, original aspects to the game I won't get into. But anyway, so 4 evolutions. Each one, I mean, that's one thing that has not changed at all or differed. There's never been one with 2 or one with 5 or whatever. It's always 4 evolutions. So we start off, and you know, they typically do grow, and there is a chart that once we get over and when we start looking at the computer screen and we start doing some digital work, and right now what we're going to do, we're just going to do concepting, so we're not going to get to the computer yet. And usually when I start off, I do just hand-drawn sketches. Now gradually, I mean, granted, if you're going to do something like this, if you're more comfortable sketching on the computer, which a lot of you guys are, that's perfectly okay. I'm just doing it the way that I'm more comfortable doing it. So anyway, so we've got 4 evolutions. There are usually a window of different sizes that we like to work in, and we can kind of go off of that. But at least, and then there's there's certain parts of the Miscrit, say if it's got a long tail, that can kind of break outside of this area, but we want to keep the main character in that little window, and we'll show you that. We'll show you kind of the guide once we get to that point. So 4 evolutions that grow, become more powerful, and typically they're more simplistic to begin with, and then as they evolve, they get more either armor or accoutrement or whatever. So yes, grow, become more powerful. Now, each Miscrit belongs to one of 6 elements. Now, I think this is pretty much standard across the board too. I know it sometimes they were toying with some that had dual elements. I don't know if that ever happened or whatever, but for the most part, there's 6 different elements. There's fire, water, nature, wind, earth, and lightning. Okay, I do remember. I'm a little rusty here. So anyway, each one of the Miscrits will represent one of those particular elements, and the idea is kind of, I would say it's rock, paper, scissors, but instead of 3 different things, well, it's not even rock, paper, scissors. There's way more, way more stats and things that need to be considered. But anyway, certain elements trump out other elements, but then there's other things involved, and it gets really complicated. But anyway, but at the basis, there's these 6 elements that I talked about. So the first thing we want to think of when we're designing a Miscrit is what element does it belong to. If its element is fire, then it should have some sort of molten, lava or flame or smoke or something along those lines. Where there's water, you can kind of get the idea. So that's what we have to do. And I've got some sketches and things, and I've got a big stack of like original sketches of Miscrits that we've designed. So I can show you some of that kind of stuff and give you sort of a better idea. When we design a Miscrit, usually one of the things we want to take into consideration is they're all kind of facing the same direction, because when we have creatures that battle, the game is, and again, I know I work on games, but I'm not the biggest gamer, so I guess side by side is the terminology. So it's a side by side kind of battle. It's turn-based game. So when we design the creatures, each of them are kind of facing left, but they also have to be reversible. But we never want to have any creature that's sort of facing straight on. Now, their bodies can be twisted, say if like they've got a battle pose like this, but their head always has to be facing one direction to one side, and then we can flip them so they can battle each other. So that brings us up some other things. We want to kind of keep them somewhat symmetrical, because when we do flip them, now we don't worry too much. Like if one guy has a bigger claw or something like that on one hand than the other, we're not too concerned that, it's not on the right, it's on the right side when it's flipped on, it's on the left or whatever. But certain things, like we don't want to have like lettering and things like that. There was one instance, and it's kind of an Easter egg. I don't know if I'll point it out or not, but there is a character that sort of has a number. Now, if we had the forethought to this, we put the number 7 on it. You can search this out, or maybe you get Miscrit aficionados know the one I'm talking about. But there's a number 7 on this Miscrit. Now, what we should have done is probably made it an 8 or a 0, or just a straight 1 without any angles to it or anything, so that it could be flipped without knowing. So actually, when that Miscrit is battling, the number 7 is in reverse, which is kind of weird. But after that was one of the early Miscrits, so after that we kind of paid attention to that. So in general, we don't like to put a lot of writing or things like that. That's especially anything that can't be flipped and look the same in reverse. So the view, we usually draw them all facing to the left, knowing that it's going to be flipped anyway. But like when you look at, say, if you go to miscrits.com, there's a Miscripedia, and you'll notice they're all kind of facing the same direction. So that's something we do when we create the Miscrits. Also, the light source is also coming from the left. So anytime we're battling, usually you're going to see the reflections on that. Again, once we flip it, it's a little different, but that's the way it goes. So maybe this world, we never discussed this, maybe this world has 2 dual suns, and the one on this side and the one on that. I don't know. Anyway, so those are some things we think about. So Miscrits, usually up until, and I noticed this recently, and this is one of those things that I'm mentioning that has kind of changed with some of the newer Miscrits I've noticed, but in the beginning there weren't any gradient colors at all. Except the only exception to this in the beginnings were things called elementums, which were the big giant bosses that you can battle. But everything was flat color, and I'll kind of show a sample of one of the creatures here. And if you can see in the small, it might look like it's a gradient, but when you zoom in, it's just darker kind of swatches of color that we've added to kind of give that feel. But it's pretty much everything's done in flat design. Now we can use, as you can see, we can use transparencies for some of the flames and some of the wind effects and things like that. But in general, we want to in the beginning, like I said, we stayed clear. Just as a design choice, we stayed clear of any gradients now. And if you look at some of the newer Miscrits, they've kind of changed, so that maybe they've went away from that. But when I design my Miscrit that I'm going to do now, I'll just stick to what I know. All right. So the other thing to consider is that, and I'm going to show you some sketches in just a minute here, but we want the creatures to be as organic as possible. Now, some of the creatures do have like armor and things like that. But the idea, at least originally, is that any armor that they have is like armor that's like grown within them, that evolves with them. It's not something that they put on and they wear. So they don't necessarily wear clothes. There was an instance where we did a promotion for like a Halloween thing where we took existing Miscrits and gave them costumes, and that was kind of just for fun. But in general, they don't really have clothes. Sometimes they'll have like capes and things, but we keep that down to a minimum, and we're still kind of using the idea that either maybe this cape is some sort of ethereal type wind type thing, and it's not really a fabric, but it's actually part of the actual creature. So everything, when we think this way, we think that everything can be grown. So for instance, here's a creature design. This is a character called Her Metal Crab that I created. So this is one of the original Miscrits, actually. So you'll notice he's sort of a samurai crab. You'll notice he has kind of a helmet, but the idea behind that again is it's not actually a helmet, that it's part of his he's a crustacean, so it's part of his, what do they call it? Exoskeleton. So things like that. Now they, because they do the Miscrits are, do feature one of these 6 elements. We like to bring that into play a lot. So you'll see like wind creatures, you'll see wind surrounding them, and they can emit that sort of thing, or fire or whatever. So sometimes that can kind of create part of what might look like a costume. But in general, we don't want anything that's like that they put on clothes and things like that. Now I'm sure if you go through all the Miscrits, some people have broke the rules and got away with it. But in the beginning, that's kind of what we were talking about, or the rules that we established. The other thing is, again, they're organic, so we're not going to see like robot Miscrits and things. Now there are some things that kind of straddle the line. I'll show you one thing I was working on. So this is a character called Steam Gwynn. And he's kind of a cross between he's like a steampunk penguin. So this is the original design. And I don't know if you can see in the back here, he's got like little wires and gears and levers and things. And right here you can see he's got some wires and stuff showing. So this design was actually rejected. And he looks pretty similar to that now, but we went ahead and we kind of got rid of some of the little actual, the gears and all that kind of stuff in the back here. So it's like he could grow a little more organically. So when we're creating Miscrits, we want to try to give them a theme. This one in particular was inspired by a chimenea. I don't know if you've ever seen these, but they're like little barbecue, or it's not really a barbecue, but it's just this little thing that you would set outside and you could sit around, but it's like a little fire pit type thing. So maybe you can recognize that from there. And I thought it would look kind of cool as a penguin. Now, pay close attention to the eyes on this, because this is one where we actually broke the rule. Because the next thing we're going to talk about actually is the eyes of the Miscrit. And that's one of the kind of the determining features of a Miscrit. Most of them have very, I don't want to say unique, but across the board, a lot of the eyes are very similar. Now, there's certain creatures that, for whatever reason, the eyes, that particular shape of eye doesn't work. So sometimes we'll change that a little bit. That was the case for this one. But for the most part, we have a certain set of eyes, and I'll kind of show you what that is. Now, here's some other Miscrits that were rejected, and you'll notice they all have these kind of beady eyes. And that's not the shape of the eyes we went with. So here's another one here. So what I'm going to do, we're going to turn over to the art desk here. We're going to just do a quick drawing session of show you what the eyes look like. And that's really something that I think is a characteristic that you can look at and say, oh, that's a miscrit by the eyes. So let's do a little sketch here. Okay, so since the eyes are like one of the most important indicators of what a miscrit is, I figured I'd just give you a quick demonstration of what a miscrit eye should look like. So it's kind of, you know, an almond shaped. Usually it's got a little, you can see a little bit of the brow here. Now that can change too, but we're going to draw a pupil here. Now the pupil is usually pretty large. All right. Now within that pupil, well, it could lie in the pupil or outside here in the iris. Let's just throw the iris in here. All right. And so here we're going to have a little, that right there is going to be the reflection. So that's a little glare that's going to be hitting right there in the iris. And then of course we can color in the pupil. So that's pretty much the shape of the eye. Now to put it in perspective, now we're going to imagine this is sort of like at an angle, because like I mentioned before, all the miscrits are going to be facing sort of this direction. So we're going to see the pupil over here. We're going to see some of that iris too, but it's kind of, most of it's going to be obscured because if you imagine the head here, you can see how it's spherical. So I mean, you don't want to, none of our characters are going to be, they're not going to be facing towards us sort of like this at all. Now because of the way, again, the eyelids kind of come over here, and sometimes a character might have eyelids, you know, sometimes they might not. It usually, you know, you tend to think that it's kind of evil looking, like those, like when you draw those eyes, you draw those eyes in black that are, you know, all you see is the eyes on like a pitch black, you know, background. But it's not really like that. So obviously we're not going to be facing the creature's never going to be facing forward. So we're always going to have a look similar to this. Now we can do different things to it. That maybe the eye, maybe it comes down a little more like that. But the idea is that we've got these big eyes, you know. So I mean, we're not going to see like round, perfectly round eyes like this. I mean, it's not. You know, we see some other, you know, creature designs where they have kind of round eyes like that. So not like that, all right? You're not going to see kind of these oval shaped eyes, you know, like this. And again, there are some exceptions, but not like that either. So let me see if I can get a sheet of paper. So again, we'll just do this kind of real quick again. But you know, we can kind of change the shape a little bit. You know, that's a little more of a teardrop shape. We've got the big iris. Now maybe because we're not I mean, not iris, but the pupil. Now since we're not doing the iris in color, you can't really tell. So I'm going to put the reflection right over the pupil. Now in some cases, you know, we can throw more than one reflection. That's something we do from time to time. So maybe there's two kind of light sources there. But basically, we just got the circle, fairly big iris. And let's just indicate this other eye. And again, a lot of times it's you're not going to see the whole thing, so you're just going to see part of it. important thing is that the creature's always kind of looking off in this direction when you draw it, and then of course we can flip it for the reverse when they're battling each other. Because the thing with Miscrits is there's really what you see is what you get. When we draw a Miscrit, that's pretty much the only pose that you're going to see it in. They're not really like animated. You're not going to see it turn its head or anything like that. So there's like one drawing, and that's why we don't spend a whole lot of time like pre-concepting. Like we don't do model sheets and things. And what a model sheet is, it's kind of like a chart that you do in the beginning just to show you what a creature or a character looks like from all angles. But since we really only see the creature from this angle, we don't typically bother with that. We do our sketches again are, let's see, so here's one, you can see how the eye is here. So this is a creature called Microblast, and he's sort of an electric chameleon. And this is pretty much the original sketch. This is what we went off of. So it's that simple. And we spend a lot of most of the time is in the rendering and stuff. We get the concept down. We may do a few passes just to get it the way we like it. But for the most part now, this creature, you can see he's kind of looking down a little bit. He's still kind of looking that direction, but this creature kind of flies. He kind of hovers. So he'll be up above the other creatures for the most part when they're battling. So he's kind of looking down a little bit, and that's fine too. But again, this is pretty much what you're going to see in the majority of the Miscrits, is an eye that kind of looks like this. We can, maybe you might see a little bit of the eyelid, or, it just kind of depends, You see some of the face here. Maybe he's like a leaf creature, Maybe he's got leaf ears or whatever. You can draw some leaf shapes in there. Maybe he's, just real quick and dirty sketches here. Kind of got I don't know what you call that. Just like a cravat or made of leaves. But yeah, so that's kind of just rough, but you can get the general idea. But that's typically what we want to do for most of the eyes. These big eyes. We don't go the beady little eyes and everything. So yeah, so I don't know if you guys are trying to create your own Miscrits. That's one indication, because I see a lot of people do their Miscrits and they get the eyes wrong, but that's probably the most important thing if you want it to look like it belongs in that world with all these other creatures, is the eyes. So okay, so that should about wrap it up for this introduction to Miscrits Creature Design 101. Now, in the next episode, we'll go a little deeper. We're going to start concepting an actual Miscrit. We'll think of some themes. We'll figure out what element it's going to be. And we're going to tie it into the Miscrits fan site, Miscrimania, which is who I'm partnering with for this particular set of videos. And I'll leave a link to that site in the description, as well as the Miscrit site in general, so you can go if you're interested. If you're new to this whole thing, you might be wanting to check it out, see what this game's all about. I'll leave a link in there and you can check it out. You can play the game, you can tell me what you think, and you can see some of the artwork that I created along with a bunch of other very talented people that I've worked with in the past. But yeah, if you want to see more of this kind of content or some of the other things on my channel, check out some of the other videos that are going to be coming up in just a minute, and leave a comment, like, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, and I'll be back next week, and that is all.